GameCola Faithful, and welcome to the GameCola Podcast. This is podcast number 114, and I am your host and podcast commander, Joseph Martin. With me today, I have Anna Bryniarski, Alex Jedraszczak, and a special guest, Paul Franzen. Everyone, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Anna Bryniarski. I'm GameCola's social media trash queen.
I'm Alex Jedraszczak. I overthrew Paul Franzen for editor-in-chief of GameCola.net.
And I'm Paul Franzen, the overthrown former editor, founder, editor emeritus. I don't know, everyone else gets fun titles, so I just want to keep adding on to mine. I think I had Weird Uncle at one point. That kind of conflicts with founding father, though, so I'm not sure. I'll have to keep thinking about that one.
You could be a father and an uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like same relationship to the same website, though. That means like something weird happened, didn't it? Like something really, really uncomfortable happened. Kind of like my intro.
So Paul today is here as our sort of guest interviewee. If you haven't been following Paul, he has been working game dev since Jetty overthrew him. I guess is the narrative we're sticking with as editor-in-chief of GameCola. So you've been working at your own sort of brand, !Rock Studios. And you've been working with Michael on some games too, right? Michael Gray?
That is correct, yeah. I've collaborated with Michael on a number of games at this point, many of which are available on Steam, so to get my first plug-in right there. Search for Rock Studios on Steam. Lots of good products. And so content.
is Rock with you and Michael? Or is it Rock is you, and then you collaborate with Michael, who is
that's more how I think of it. Like when I originally quote unquote founded it, which it feels weird to say that, but it was supposed to be like I'm Rock Studio. Rock Studios is me and like the individual people that I collaborate with on specific projects with. So like I made The Beard in the Mirror with my wife Lizzo, another former GameCola writer, and I've been making a lot of games with Michael. It just kind of turned out that most of my collaborating has been with Michael for the last few years. Okay,
and you, so just quickly off the top of your head,
yes,
if you can.
Oh boy.
Like what have you put out so far? Because it's been quite a number for the past couple of years.
Yeah, so we put out we started releasing just like really tiny visual novels or what I was calling visual novelettes at the time on itch.io. We made a little like half-hour long game called My Nigerian Prince, a game about dating the person who sends you spam email. We follow that up with, since I was working with Michael at the time, we followed it up with the obvious choice, a Nancy Drew parody game called Francie Drew, and we have not been sued over that yet, which makes me very happy. And from there, we kind of moved on to bigger games. We finally released The Beard in the Mirror, which longtime GameCola fans will know as Test Game, that Lizzo used to write a monthly column about. We had been working on that for about a decade. And then, of course, our, quote, big hit, Cat President, a More Purrfect Union, a dating sim about talking cats running for president.
Yeah, if anyone who isn't, like, sort of familiar with GameCola in general, Cat President would probably be the one you've most likely heard about outside of the context of GameCola.
It's true.
That one worked out pretty well.
That one was written about on actual websites. Sorry.
Hey.
I kind of messed up the inflection there. I was really going for like on actual websites, like Polygon and stuff like that, and it was more, the inflection was more my excitement. All right, I'm just digging myself deeper. Let's continue.
So what is life as game dev sort of been like for you? Sort of now, I guess, sort of because you've been working on Test Game, which then became Beard in the Mirror. Mm-hmm. While you were still editor-in-chief of GameCola, and then when you moved on to just game dev, that sort of like was a separate thing. So that wasn't a very well phrased question, but I think you get the gist of like what's different sort of moving from one state of game development to the other.
Yeah, I mean it stopped being like kind of a side project and became more of like the main thing I was working on. Like for a long time, like The Beard in the Mirror really kind of filled the void that GameCola had taken, had left, I should say. And, you know, around the same time, too, I guess about a year after I left GameCola, I also first went part-time at my real-life grown-up job, and then mostly no time at that job, and I've kind of been doing game development full-time ever since, you know, just out of my home office with my bunny rabbit and turtle. So yeah, it's been different. I really like working from home. I really like having a nice creative outlet. Like it's so rewarding to have this kind of job and to do a job where I'm like really putting stuff out into the world. Like even if these games aren't being played by very, very many people, which you know they aren't. It's really cool to be doing this.
So I remember earlier, there were a lot of Steam Greenlight campaigns that you ran.
Yeah.
I don't really know what Steam Greenlight is up to these days, but it seems like itch.io sort of became a better hub.
Yes,
I don't know. I guess
no.
that's a...
Yeah. Well, so Steam Greenlight is dead. R.I.P. It's not around
Yeah.
anymore. It was replaced by Steam
Direct or
Steam
something?
Direct, yeah, where instead of trying to rally support for your game and prove that it's worthwhile, you just give them $100 and then your game's on Steam. So the upshot, what's cool about itch.io versus Steam is that you know, there's no fee. You just put your game on there. You don't even have to give them a percentage of the revenue if you don't want to. The downside is that very few people use itch.io, so you don't make any money off there. At least in my experience. Like I was looking at numbers. It was either Cat President or Test Game, I forget which, but we sold something like 300 times more copies on Steam than itch.io. Like it was some absurd number. But itch.io is a really good site though because you can also choose to like give the developer a tip if you want to. So you can actually pay more instead of on Steam where you pretty much have to put your game at 75% off in order to get anyone to buy it.
I think a key thing with that is also that you can put your game up for free and people can still have the option to give you money.
That's true, yeah. Yep.
And like that way like people can actually play the game, and if they think it's worthwhile, then they can pay you.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, well, if I even just charged $1, that already is like going to limit, you know, how many people actually play it at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like if itch.io had more users, like it would be at the very least the best platform for developers.
Yeah.
But it's getting there. I mean, I've seen people talk about it on Twitter sometimes, so it's becoming more of a thing.
So there's one set of games that has been conspicuously absent from our discussion, which in part may be because it'll lead into our larger title topic. I don't know what I'm titling this podcast, but it's probably going to be something related to the Smithsonian. But the Awkward Steve Duology.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it came to be, and then sort of what it became, and then
Sure.
we'll sort of segue into how the Smithsonian factors into this.
Which is already a ridiculous thing for anyone to have said. Anyway, it's an FMV game. It uses live action footage. You watch a little video, stuff happens, and then you get to choose what happens next. This was inspired by I had been going through this sort of phase where I'd been playing a lot of really bad FMV games, mostly from yard sales and thrift stores, and noting that, you know, this is a thing I could do. Like, this is really easy gameplay. I could just code this in Ren'Py. I could make this a thing. And then I, just started wondering what the indie version of a Star Trek Borg would look like. And what I came up with was a black and white game starring one person filmed entirely in one house about a really kind of menial subject. And so I made a game about trying to psych yourself up to answer your front door when someone's knocking on it and you don't know who they are. I wrote the script in about, I want to say, a day, filmed it over the course of 2 or 3 days, and then programmed it for like 8 months.
And then that one sort of like, not like Cat President necessarily, but like that one sort of had its own cult status. Like actual websites wrote about that one too.
You
Yes.
are on IMDb.
Yeah. I made the original game. It was called A Stranger Comes Calling. I put it out on itch.io, and I really didn't expect, like, I didn't know if anyone was going to like it, because it was just such a really dumb game about, you know, the doorbell rings, and you get to choose whether you want to hide under the table or or attempt to sneak up to the door and look out the window without anybody noticing, or... You know, I mean, the whole game is about you basically trying to lower your anxiety meter to the point where you're comfortable opening the door and figuring out who's been waiting there all this time while you screw around. So I didn't think anything was going to come of it, and it got good feedback. The people who played it liked it. It got written about in a couple different places. I got to do an interview with fmvworld.com, which was very exciting. Oh, yeah. And yeah, it was just this little game that was sitting around, and then I decided to make a sequel. I decided to build another small game just like it. I was living out in California at the time, along a really beautiful beach, a beautiful quiet beach that no one ever visited except us. So I thought it would be a good idea to take advantage of that while I was living there and use that to film some scenes for the game. So that sort of became the basis for the sequel called Don't Turn Your Back on the Ocean.
Which is an amazing title.
So it came from there was actually a phrase living out there in Northern California that people would tell you in hushed tones if you were going to the ocean. Don't turn your back on the ocean, because the tide would come and drag you into and kill you. Which never really came up in the game, but that's sort of where the title came from.
I was very confused the entire time.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I did not do I came up with the title and the setting, but I didn't really do a great job of marrying them together. It's unclear what the title is actually referring to, besides the fact that it sounds cool. But yeah, while A Stranger Comes Calling was a game about answering your front door, this was a game about locking yourself in the bathroom while your roommate was throwing a party. And just hiding there and just trying to keep yourself entertained until it was over and everybody went away. Until something happens and you decide maybe this is a place you want to be after all. But that goes into spoiler territory, so I'm not going to go any further than that.
Spoiler alert, I'm still sad.
My wife made me take her out for ice cream after she finished it. She was so upset.
When you released Don't Turn Your Back on the Ocean, you released it in a dual pack, right?
Yeah, I released them. I released Don't Turn Your Back on the Ocean and A Stranger Comes Calling kind of together as a single package called the Awkward Steve Duology. Mostly because at the time, A Stranger Comes Calling had already passed through Steam Greenlight, and so I thought it'd be better just kind of combine them two and release them that way rather than try to go through at the time Steam Greenlight and try to go through that a second time. That seemed like too much trouble, so I thought it'd be better to release them together. And plus, they were both such tiny games. It just sort of made sense in my head to release them together instead of asking people to buy them individually.
And so, how long ago was that, roughly?
That was just over the summer, August, I think, or July. Yeah, it was the day after my birthday. That's right.
For those who don't know, and sort of what we've been leading up to, the Awkward Steve Duology was featured in an exhibit in the Smithsonian.
It's the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened in my entire life.
And so,
by far,
the sort of what we've been leading up to so far in this podcast is, how did that happen? Was that something that you signed up for?
I ask myself that every day.
Did it come out of the blue?
No. Okay. It was on Twitter. Someone on Twitter shared this thing about this convention that was coming up at the Smithsonian, asking for indie developers to submit their games to be showcased in the Smithsonian American Art Museum. So they didn't approach me. I approached them. I found the link and I actually submitted 3 games because, as it turned out, there was no limit on how many games you could submit. So I just went. I'm just gonna submit everything. So I submitted, The Beard in the Mirror was the one I thought was the best fit. It was of all the games I've released, like The Beard in the Mirror is the one that most looks like a video game. Like it's the game that most has something that's identifiable as gameplay, where you click on things and solve puzzles and like do stuff. So I kind of thought that had the best shot. I also submitted Cat President because the convention was in DC, so I figured why not a game about American politics. And then I submitted Awkward Steve just because I thought it would be very, very silly if it got accepted. I did not think it actually had a chance. I submitted it more because of how I would die laughing if it got accepted.
Wow.
And then it
Did
did. And yes, I did. I got the email, and my wife thought something was wrong the way I was reacting. I literally I don't use the phrase rolling on the floor laughing my ass off, but that's what happened. I fell to the ground and could not stop laughing for 2 minutes straight. How absurd it was that this black and white FMV game that I filmed on my phone was going to be in this the Smithsonian, the Smithsonian. So that's how that happened.
So you signed up.
Yes.
And then you got the email, and they said, which also that means that someone played it.
A bunch of people did.
A bunch of people. Who was the panel who decided?
It was a panel. They have a list of names on their website, I think, but it was, developers, critics, and I think academics. One of the main guys I talked with was a professor of game design, I think.
Wow.
So these are real people who played this game. Were yes, we want Awkward Steve. Yes, this belongs in a museum.
And I think it speaks to the merit of the game too, because at this time you didn't have clout. No, there wasn't people who were oh yes, the people who made Cat President have submitted a game to our exhibit.
Oh, absolutely! No one knows who I am.
We...
That's a true statement, Joe.
Right.
Thank you for bringing that up.
I wasn't.
No, I know it's cool. It's cool.
But you would think that an event like that would be way into
Notoriety.
Not even notoriety, but just networking and connections. And
yeah.
This person got in because they knew this person, so they were already familiar with their games.
Yeah, most of the other games they had there weren't a lot of games that I had actually heard of coming into the convention. So I think they might have actually specifically been selecting games that hadn't had a lot of publicity yet. I think they were looking to highlight newer games like that by fresh young developers like me.
Yeah.
So you went in,
mm-hmm.
and so they said you're in. What did you have to do? Did you have to since it's a digital game, if it was a physical game, you didn't have to mail them a physical copy or anything, or anything. They just had the game, I guess. And
I had to make a demo build and put it on. I had it on my laptop. I had it on 2 laptops, mine and my friends, and we just kind of set them up at a table and let people play them. I only exhibited the first game, A Stranger Comes Calling. They didn't get the people at the convention didn't get the whole thing. One, because that was actually the only one I had submitted. I wasn't far enough along with Ocean to be able to submit the whole package. But also because Ocean goes some places that I didn't think would be fun for a convention. I didn't want to make people sad. But yeah, I just loaded up onto a couple of laptops, set up my table. I had a whole team there with me, which was kind of one of the best parts of the whole convention. My wife and my 2 closest friends in the world all came with me to provide both emotional and technical support throughout the convention. So Lizzo and also fellow former GameCola writers Matt Gardner and Captain Eric Reagan, who maybe someone listening to this remembers, but probably not. Jetty does, but
I remember.
Of course.
Looks off into distance.
But yeah, that was incredibly helpful. One, because it meant if I had to pee, I could leave the table and no one would steal my stuff. But also, like everyone really had their own role. Like Eric, like I said, Eric was in charge of making sure the computers like continued to function throughout the day, which a couple of times they didn't, especially when everyone in the convention lost electricity. That was kind of a problem. Matt was in charge of talking to the people that I didn't want to talk to. Basically, the people who were very like more awkward and uncomfortable than I am. He talked to the weirdos. That was kind of his job. And Lizzo, she helped to make sure, like, I took breaks sometimes and didn't get too stressed out. And she brought me ice cream once, if I recall correctly, and that was good.
So what were aside from the weirdos that you didn't interact with? What were the people like who came to this event? Was it like a separate event within the Smithsonian, or was it like a day and then regular Smithsonian like visitors were just like, could come and be like, look at this cool thing that's happening, let's go check it out? Or was it like an event that you had to sign up to attend?
Oh no, it definitely wasn't that. It was I mean, it was free to the public. It was kind of right there in, I guess, what was the courtyard of the museum. I think it was like kind of the food court area actually. And it was just a thing that members of the public came to, but it was kind of a combination of just random people that walked in and were like, what is happening? Why are these things here? And then people who were there specifically for the games. You could usually pick them out because they were wearing Zelda shirts.
What were they like?
Well, based on my experience, a lot of them were befuddled and bewildered because they were playing Awkward Steve and did not have any idea what was happening. Yeah, I got a lot of very, very confused looks, but a lot of people were really into it. A lot of people were nice. Some were kind of surly. Like, I could kind of tell when someone sat down and would look at the game, and it was obvious that they weren't into it, but felt like they had to keep playing it in order to be polite. And sometimes they weren't very polite. One of my favorite guests at the table was this woman who sat down with kind of a mean look on her face, and she just said, "I hate video games." She sat down and she said, "I hate video games," and then she played Awkward Steve until she died, which is a really, really hard thing to do in the first Awkward Steve game. Like, you really have to work to kill yourself in that game.
Wow.
She died, she got up, and then she came back and played it again. And the whole time she just had this look on her face that was like, "I'm gonna murder you for creating this thing." And the look, like, did not leave her face. She played the whole thing, she beat it, and then she just got up and left, still scowling.
What the hell?
Why?
That's terrifying.
Yeah. So that was something that happened. But other than that, most of the people were really cool. Like the first people who played the game on the first day were two little girls, little sisters, and one sat at each laptop, and they were competing to see who could get Steve to open the door the fastest. So that it was like Awkward Steve esports. I was really into it. Yeah, there were a lot of questioning looks at me and wondering, what have I done? Why have you done this? And then me trying to awkwardly explain what the game was when, half the time I don't even know what it is.
I'm just as surprised that this is here as you are.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. Yes.
So it was a multiple day affair. I didn't realize it was more than one day.
Yeah.
A Saturday and a Sunday. It was very tiring. I've done conventions like this before. Like, I think I've written about it on GameCola. We showed off. We just kind of advertised
City?
game. Yeah, Queen City Kamikaze. Me, Christian, Matt, and Eric were like advertising GameCola at that one. I showed off Test Game at Boston Fig a couple of years ago, but this was the first that was like 2 whole days of nonstop socializing with people. It was very exhausting, and it was never lost on me the irony of standing in front of a table and trying to actively and socially promote a game about social anxiety.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to check out any of the other games that were there?
Yes, so the first night they did a pizza and soda party for all the developers. After I think there was beer too, but whatever. After we kicked all the public out, and it was really, it took all of my self-restraint I should back this up by saying that there weren't just indie games there. There were also like rows and rows of classic games too. They had like NES's, Super Nintendo's, N64s. You could play Mario Kart, Zelda. Like we were right across from Ocarina of Time, which I did not think was fair comparison or competition. That was not great. So after the convention was over for the night, we had our party. It took all of my restraint to not just sit there and play Super Mario Kart for an hour, and to actually like get around and see what else everyone else was doing. One of my favorites was they had this. They had like indie arcade cabinets, which I did not know was a thing. Like indie games that were built into arcade cabinets, I think like running off of like tablets and stuff. And they had this one game that was essentially do you know the game Asteroids, the old arcade game Asteroids?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had a game that was like 4-player Asteroids, except all the ships had like different powers and different abilities, and so that was a lot of fun. We got onto the high score list for easy mode, which was a very proud moment for me. Possibly because we were the only ones who played easy mode, but we did it. But yeah, it was really cool getting to see all the other games. Like, to my shock, Awkward Steve was somehow not the only game about social anxiety being presented at this convention. There was one that sadly the developer wasn't able to make it. But she was supposed to be showing off a game called The Average Everyday Adventures of Samantha Brown.
I love that
which
game.
A game about hiding in your dorm room because you want to make ramen and there's people in the kitchen, which is basic. It came out the same time as Awkward Steve too.
It did, yeah.
Kind of the same game, except theirs was a visual novel and mine was an FMV game. So there was supposed to be that. There was also like a side scroller about social anxiety. And there was also a game that was literally called Awkward Annie.
What?
Yes. Which is, I played it. There's like it's a free Flash game, I think. And it's a game about wandering around your cubicles and trying to select the most awkward dialogue options with people. It's pretty good.
Were the three of you all seated next to each other?
We weren't. I don't know why we weren't. We really should have been.
Did you get a chance to talk to any of the developers during, like you said, there was like a pizza party and
yeah, but the thing was, by the end of the day, I was just so like all I wanted to do was never talk to anybody ever again. So I wasn't like feeling my most social. I felt kind of bad because there was like this one guy who tried to start up a conversation with us while we were in line to get pizza about this awesome game he was making for people who did not have use of their arms or did not have arms. Like, it's a game about where it like connects to your bicep, I guess, and like you flex your bicep in order to jump. And he was trying to explain it to me, and all I could think about was how much I did not want to talk to anybody ever again. So I felt a little bad about that. So yes, we had the opportunity to talk to people, but no, I did not take advantage of that as much as I should have. I did make some kids cry. That was pretty good.
Wow.
Wow.
Multiple little children were horrified of Awkward Steve. Specifically, I think it was the way he talks. For anyone who hasn't seen the game, that doesn't really have much in the way of dialogue. Steve just kind of stares at the camera and like flaps his mouth up and down in a way that almost approximates talking, but isn't quite, and no sounds actually come out. And then like you see the dialogue in like a silent film title afterwards. Yeah, that scared some people. They weren't happy. There was one little girl who like played the game, freaked out, ran away, came back, got freaked out again, and ran away again. That was another highlight. Yes.
And so was there any sort of aftermath to this, or was it just like Sunday you wrapped up and that was sort of the end of it, or?
Yeah. So what I didn't get to say was my family was there. My parents came, my oldest brother came, my in-laws came, my grandfather-in-law came. Like, it was a whole thing. And on the last day, my parents took us all out for dinner afterwards. So that was sort of the wrap up for the whole thing. Was just getting a nice meal and then going to sleep forever and never talking to anyone ever again.
And so now do you say like Paul Franzen, approved by Smithsonian, or
I had my name legally changed to Paul. My game was in the Smithsonian, Franzen. Yes.
Is it
Absolutely.
Is it at least in the trivia section on IMDb?
I don't think it is. That's another thing. I don't know why there's an IMDb page for. I had nothing to do with this, but I'm very highly rated as an actor and director and producer on IMDb now, which is exciting. I don't think it's. Maybe it is now that we talked about it on the podcast. Maybe someone will go edit that in, but I haven't touched that.
I don't even know how that works. Like who gets to do like?
I think
can
it's just like
anyone?
Wikipedia, isn't it?
But Wikipedia has like, I mean, Wikipedia used to be like anyone, but like now you gotta like do a couple things, and like if you like just sign up and then start doing whatever, like it's gonna start being vetted, and like people who are on Wikipedia all the time are gonna notice. So you can't really just write whatever.
Yeah, no, I have absolutely no idea who added it.
I don't know like what counts as being like what's.
Oh, I'm rated.
Like,
the game's rated 8.0 out of 10. Not bad.
Because like,
Yay.
do video games count? Because it's the Internet Movie Database.
Yeah,
I guess it's an
under the
game.
video. No, it's just under the video game category. I think they have listings for video games.
they
just,
definitely do.
I mean, it might just be to put like voice actors and stuff
Yeah.
in there. I'm not sure, but
That's pretty much what it is, because I've definitely done that a lot of times.
yeah,
Like, look that up.
yeah. But I'm now listed on IMDb as a director, actor, writer, and producer. which is again, everything that has ever happened with this game is completely absurd. It's ridiculous. There was a fun part when I joked on Twitter that everyone on my team should wear the goofy pug shirt that Awkward Steve wears, and then a representative from the Smithsonian American Art Museum emailed me and said, "Yes, do that." That was exciting. We didn't actually do it. It cost too much. I spent all my budget on a banner. That was it. That was the only other thing in my notes.
So what's next? What's your next hit game that's gonna top all the charts in the Smithsonian and just be like, get its own exhibit in the Smithsonian, just it?
I mean, I don't think anything I've ever made, that included, actually should be in a museum. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, the next game I'm working on, it should be coming out within the next couple of months, is going back to the beginning of this podcast. It's the Francie Drew and Friends collection. So we collected both the first two games that I talked about, My Nigerian Prince and Francie Drew, along with a brand new Francie Drew game and a couple of others, and we're just kind of bundling them together and dropping them on Steam, and we're gonna see what happens with that.
Garfield and Friends type.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah. I don't know. I think the name Francie Drew was really funny, so I wanted to put that in the title. That was pretty much it. It was either that or like the Argle Fump anthology, because Michael wrote all the games, but I didn't think that would have the as wide appeal. I wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm.
Fun trivia: Diana Gray appears in multiple of these games. She does voiceovers in the two Francie Drew games, and she acts in one of the other games, Who Am I? The Let's Play Disaster.
I saw her and I got excited. I was like, yay!
Yeah, so that's a fun thing for GameCola fans.
What was the name of the one that I was supposed to be in? My brother, my brother, my brother, my brother, my brother, and me.
That is a podcast. I don't think I had anything to do with that one.
No, the game.
The Alex to Alex.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. How could I forget?
Yeah. About a dating site for people named Alex, and you were going to play everybody.
That's right.
Yeah. Haven't gotten too far with that one, I'm sad to say.
I would say it would be just GameCola people luck to like name something and then be like, oh yeah, but there's this super popular thing that already has that name.
Yeah, I have part of a script for that game sitting on my hard drive somewhere, but yeah, maybe someday. We'll see.
Because like we've been trying to name the RPG cast to something like that's more of a name now that so many more Dungeons and Dragons and RPG podcasts are sort of cropping up. So we need something that differentiates us a little more than the name of the group that does it. But like all of the good ones are taken already. Like I wanted to do something like metagame because like we, like the idea is that we take video game mechanics and try to apply them to a tabletop setting. But like there's already like 3 podcasts named some variation of the metagaming. So
well, it's like what happened with Read It and Weep too, right?
Oh yeah.
The original name for Hacks and Slash lasted all of 1 episode before they emailed us. The people who actually have a real podcast with that name told us to stop.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't realize that the people actually emailed you. I thought you just found out.
No,
later.
It was either the actual people or like someone who just listened to it. But same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such a good name for a podcast that someone had already used it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
You didn't like the PCPPTPC?
I remember. What did you write?
Portcolas Portable Port Table Portcast.
Oh, port table.
Yeah.
Did you ever actually suggest that out of that? Because that's actually really good.
I did not.
There's got to be something we can do with that. We'll figure that out later, and maybe you listeners will be the first to hear of what finalized, or it'll be a completely different name, and you won't know. But
for those who don't know, we were trying to get something that says it's a port, like you port from NES to Genesis, but it's to tabletop. So I was trying to say port table.
I think we can make that work. I think we can make that work.
I think Rizzy is the best gameable top.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I like that.
I think you mean yes. Because that's obviously the best one.
Well, I think unless there's anything else, Paul, that you wanted to mention, we could move on to the podcast staple of video games we've been playing.
That sounds good to me.
So, Paul, we'll give you a break because you've been talking for the past 45 minutes. Anna, what video games have you been playing in recent times?
Well,
are they related to Thomas the Tank Engine?
Actually, it's been about a month, and I said I was going to do it, and I still need to finish it. I decided that since I downloaded all those apps, I might as well write a top of the heap article about them all. And I finally finished playing all of them. Found out that my phone can do screen recording, so get to see me actually talk to Thomas this time. It's gonna be great.
No, they heard it last podcast. Remember?
It was really, as a listener, it was really hard to tell when it was Joe and when it was Thomas. I couldn't tell the difference.
What are you talking about? It was only Thomas. There was Thomas and some person who definitely wasn't Thomas.
That would explain it.
No, but for some reason the narrator has a British accent, but then Thomas and his friends do not. Anyway, all the games are kind of awful, but then again, it's mostly because most of it is pay to play. And I'm just like, I don't want to pay for things. So there's only one good one, so it's pretty easy judgment on that one. But along with those, which I finally finished and don't have to play ever again, I've been playing a lot of Stardew Valley again. James and I just finished Valhalla, at least like the main story we finished a few days ago, so that was a lot of fun, and I forgot how many feels I felt while playing it the first time. Still playing that plant simulator where I have to take care of a plant, and like I can't do in real life, I'm looking at my dying bamboo plant now. And then I picked up another game called West of Loathing. It's a Western RPG with stick figures. It's pretty funny. I watched some YouTubers play it, and I was like, this is actually pretty good. So I picked it up, and I've played about 30 minutes of it, and it's already really funny. I also started playing Sims 4 again, even though I thought I hated it a lot more than I did. I still kind of hate it, but less so.
Is West of Loathing related to Kingdom of Loathing?
I don't know.
I'm gonna assume that it is.
I'm gonna look it up. But
because like
I think it is, because it looks exactly like Kingdom of Loathing.
it probably is then, yeah.
Yeah.
When you said stick figures, I was like, oh, it has to be.
But I think that's it. I have a fun story though. A few weeks ago, Paul did it was like explore a haunted house.
Oh, my Twext adventure.
Yes.
What?
He did basically a text adventure over Twitter, and he had prizes, which would be either a game code or one of the pins that he passed out at the Smithsonian, which says, "Hi, I'm awkward," which I needed in my life. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, one of my old roommates on Twitter, because I posted a picture of the pin on my jacket. She was just like, "What does it say under that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a game that my friend made."
Yes.
She's never gonna play it because she's not into video games.
Oh.
So, well, no.
Here's a game developer secret. That's why we hand out those pins. Is for exactly that.
But yeah, she at least wanted to know what it was.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, that's aside from random phone games. That's all I've been doing.
Jetty.
Okay, so did I talk last time about Worm Journey to the Center of the Earth?
I don't think so.
That
he might have.
does not sound familiar.
Okay, oh man. Like, I couldn't remember. It's been a while. I probably played it, like, immediately after the recording of the last podcast. I'm writing a review of it. It's an NES game that I remember seeing it in Nintendo Power back in the day and thinking, wow, this looks really boring. I have no interest in this whatsoever. And the thing is that, like, I wish that I had played it back then because, like, knowing how much I like Crystalis, I feel like I would have really enjoyed this game.
And how boring that game is.
Like, it's a really bad game. Like, they involve a side-scrolling shooter that makes no sense because, like, you just fly through all of the obstacles and you're, like, flying underground drill machine. Then it has vertical scrolling segments. Then it has, like, side-scrolling platforming adventure segments. And, like, a weird first-person sort of, like, shooter mode. And, like, none of them are fun. None of them are good. All of them are extremely short. But the story is just, like, so wild that I wish that I could have experienced it back when I could enjoy a terrible, poorly translated story.
Jetty, I heard the phrase poorly translated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need a couple examples on that one.
Hold on, I believe I have dozens of screenshots. I'm sad that, like, oh yeah, the end of the game is like 12 pages of like story about how, like, there were people living on the overworld and then they like sunk under the surface of the sea, but then, like, people came from the moon and took over, but then they also went underground, and but in the end we all destroyed ourselves and our beautiful planet with one last great war, a nuclear war. Oh yeah, all of these things that they say oh, that's the other thing, is that it has, like, anime cutscenes on the NES. Oh man, the one where she walks out of the ship that they play every single time. My favorite part of the game is where the mini boss says, "You crumbs are still alive."
But that's actually really good dialogue. I really enjoy that.
There's a part where a robot tells you, "May the power be with you." So I'm just like looking through these screenshots and trying to find like some good ones. I'm like distracted. Here, hold on.
May the joules per second be with you.
There's...
Is this green-haired Samus Aran? This game was about an earthworm.
Yeah, Earthworm Jim. Yeah. Hold on. There's one where...
What is this game called again?
Worm Journey to the Center of the Earth. I like...
Who is this Lady Worm?
No.
What?
Yeah, what?
So this is a real game that was on the NES? It came out in the US and everything? I'd never heard of this game. Oh, man.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing it in Nintendo Power and being like, wow, this looks really boring, because the screenshots just showed like the side-scroller part from what I remember. Hold on. I need to go back and look at some of these. I like one where she just says, VZR, touchdown. I'm like, yeah, woo, goal, we win the Super Bowl. Oh, my favorite part. Sorry, I'm pretty sure I use this also in the, what does it all mean? I'm asking myself that question.
Same.
And you're saying this game is bad?
That's amazing.
Perhaps we can see the future beyond the rain.
God.
Yeah,
So is that mostly what you've been playing recently?
It honestly only took maybe an hour to play. So I wouldn't say that's mostly what I've been playing, but I actually haven't played a lot of games this past month, I guess. So yes.
All right. I have recently been playing Try to Purchase a Nintendo Switch while avoiding any spoilers for Mario Odyssey, which is really difficult on both fronts. Even in our GameCola Discord itself, it's really difficult.
Oh, it's
because
so bad.
The off-topic channel on our Discord is just full of Mario Odyssey right now. And then it's all over YouTube. Everyone's playing Mario Odyssey. It's the next best thing. Everybody, I don't know, a lot of people are taking it and comparing it basically to their favorite Mario, that type of Mario game. So I've seen lots of it's like Super Mario 64, it's like Super Mario Sunshine. I haven't heard a lot of comparisons to Mario Galaxy.
What about to Super Mario Brothers 2?
No, probably not a lot of comparisons. To the 3D Marios is what I meant.
Do they have those?
Yes, Jetty. You'll get there one day.
No. They don't exist.
You should have gotten to Super Mario 64 by now. You got to Game Boy Advance, so you're in the you're in the early 2000s.
You're up to Game Boy Advance now? Man.
Yeah, you haven't heard about me playing
I'm so behind the times.
Pokemon Mystery Dungeon?
Oh, no, wait, I thought that was Diana that was playing that.
No, it was me.
I mean, I think she's also playing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Copycat.
Jetty would know this if he was on Twitter. Just saying.
But yeah, so you've been that's GameCube. You could have gotten up to Super Mario Sunshine by now. So Super Mario Galaxy was the my childhood Mario game. I played Super Mario Sunshine when I was young, but Super Mario Galaxy was that Mario game that blew me away. The way that I feel lots of people had that moment with Super Mario 64 of whoa, this is video games. Just the orchestral presentation and the cool gravity mechanics and just the really large, the whole idea of making things feel as big as possible. Even if you're going from little planet to little planet, presentationally, these really big spaces. I guess spaces, because it's in space.
Whoa.
I see what I did there.
That was excellent.
I got it.
So I'm interested to compare it to that, because it seems like the idea is that they're trying to go back to Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine type stuff, which, you know, could be a lot of fun, but I hope that they don't get rid of the aspects of Galaxy that I liked in favor of the Super Mario 64 style. So we'll just have to see, because I don't even know if I can quite articulate like what those things would be, like, that I wouldn't want them to get rid of necessarily. So we'll have to see. I think a lot of it comes down to presentation, which I think it'll have. Quick pause real quick. I need to get my I need to plug my computer in.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm really glad Jetty's in this podcast too, so I'm not the only one freaking out that Joe's childhood memory was was GameCube.
No, that was Wii.
Wii. It's even worse. That was the Wii. Oh God, no! I played that in college.
Yes, you are.
Oh God, I am nothing but dirt and dust.
I mean, it wasn't like, when I say child, I mean, I don't know if this will make me feel better or not.
It's done. The damage is done. I take 5 more points of psychic damage.
When I say childhood, I mean, like, Mario Galaxy came out in 2007, so I was still like 11.
Remember that time we made Paul feel old by telling him how old we were when Pokémon came out? I do.
Oh.
I remember that so well because it's really funny because the three of us are around the same age. Like, Joe, Diana, and I are all around the same, like, we're around the same age.
Why do we have all these children on the staff?
It's really funny. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, it works. It works every time.
So fun.
It's like when I noticed that my nephew, who was born, like, I don't know, 2000, like, he's in high school now, like, he shouldn't be old enough to talk yet. What is this? This is not right.
My youngest cousin is 17 years younger than I am, so, like, the fact that he's, like, how old am I? He's, like, 5 now, so I'm just like, no.
Yeah, you have to...
You're still a baby, and he's, like, only 5.
You get to look forward to him waxing nostalgia about, like, the Switch 3, like...
I've sort of been feeling the opposite effect, mostly because Stranger Things, the trailer has been coming out, and it's just like all 80s nostalgia. Like, just completely and entirely, like, there's Dragon's Lair and, like, Ghostbusters and all that. And, like, I'm sick of all of the 80s stuff. Well, I'm not sick of it, but, like, I am feeling a similar, like, adults these days sort of vibe. Though not, like, serious, but it is kind of why I don't watch the show that much.
I have had that thought. I was actually thinking about that recently, that, like, okay, so much stuff in, like, the 80s and 90s that, like, I grew up with was made by people who were, like, around my age now, who were thinking of their childhood back in, like, the 60s. So my basis, and, like, so many things that are coming out right now, is people who are in their 30s now who grew up in the 80s and 90s. So, like, we're referencing things from our childhood. But what happens when we finally reach the point where people who grew up in, like, 1997, like, get to talk about, like, Backstreet Boys and, like, do throwbacks to their youth?
So, something weird. Things, like, from the, like, late 80s, 90s make me feel nostalgic. Not in the same way that it makes people who actually grew up, like, watching these things feel, but because most of my, like, first 2 years of high school, like, end of junior high, I was watching those things because I didn't have anything better to do and I didn't like anything else that was happening. So, I always found that weird, but it's cool.
Well, I think it's in large part because, like, these days, it's so much easier for us to get access to old media.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because, like, before, you had, like, if you had, like, music, if you wanted to listen to it, you had to listen to something like on a
Yeah.
record player, even though all the new stuff was coming out on like CDs and then like now like VHS and DVDs. But now everything, once it's on the internet, once it's digital, it's just there forever. And barring like weird file types, you can get access to it. So now, like, if you want to listen to an old song, you can do it on Spotify, which is like the same place that you would listen to new music. And so since it's all in one place, I think we as a culture are more familiar with older cultural things than perhaps our parents or grandparents were.
Actually, we recently, before we moved GameCola's headquarters to Salem, Massachusetts, we were. Is it stealing to use someone else's Netflix account? Does that?
Do they know you're using it?
Yes.
Okay, then no.
Well,
If they know, then it's
I mean, but is it stealing from Netflix though? I guess your question. Yeah, I guess.
Technically, yes, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean they have like family plans. They're made to have like 3 separate accounts in like the big umbrella account, right? Like that's how it's. Well, I think so. With we share my in-laws account, and there's 3 profiles in it, and I think it lets you, or at least it lets us, like we can watch something at the same time, like her sister's watching something. But I think then if like a third person tries to watch, that's when it runs into, like I think you can have a couple simultaneous people, but there's a limit. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it might just depend on the plan we have too. They might specifically have a like I said, a family plan that allows for this.
Well, my point was
yes,
that I had watched the first season, but then when we moved, I couldn't watch the second season, so we went and we found a website online. We watched it all over the course of a weekend, and then we decided to go back to the website and try to find something else, and the website was gone. So, speaking of, people going after more recent things, it is not an inaccurate statement.
The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick before we move on to what games Paul's been playing is that my just struggles trying to purchase a Nintendo Switch, because the thing is that I was like, okay, I have time to play the Switch now, so I'm going to look it up on Amazon, and it said it was like $300, which makes sense. That's the price. So I was like, cool. But it was late, and so I didn't order it then because I wanted to look around and see what other stuff, if I want to buy extra controllers, what games to get. But then I checked back the next day, and it was up to $340.
What?
Base price. And I was like, what the heck, Amazon? So now I would like to have a Switch so that I can report on it, for GameCola.net, the actual internet website. But it's just frustrating because I don't want to spend $40 extra just because Amazon's being a butt to me.
Yeah.
That's better than when I checked recently, and it was up to 400 something. So
wow.
Yeah, I saw them at Target, and they were $300. I didn't have the money. I had the money, but I needed to be good and not spend that money. But I wanted.
Oh, just be bad. Just
no,
just be bad.
I can't. I have to be responsible for once. I have to save money for things like food and coffee, so I don't.
Well, I know you can. You can't you lick the cartridges for sustenance? I know something happens when you lick them, right?
Okay, I was determined not to do that ever, but I went to Cam's, and he has a Switch, and he's like,
yes!
You gotta do it. And I'm like, I don't want to, and he's like, you gotta do it. And so I did, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I was like, this isn't the worst thing ever, but it's still not great.
So on that note, why don't, Paul, we move on to what games you've been playing in recent times?
Yeah, the game I was gonna play. Jetty rejected my invite for Dice with Buddies, so I don't have that on tap this month. But no, I've been playing. I just completed a game called Steins for the PlayStation Vita. I think it's on Steam too. This
Wait, for the
really
what?
really good Sorry, it's Steins Gate.
No, what is this?
Oh.
This console?
The Vita, Vita.
You're just
I could
making
do
stuff up now, Paul.
I could do, Jetty, an entire like monthly podcast about games, visual novels I'm playing on my Vita right now, because for some reason, like, that's the only game on it and I love it. I just, like, some people like read like real books before going to bed, and I just like sit there and play my visual novels before my dating sims. I date cute boys before going to bed, and it's the best. But no, I've been playing this game called Steins Gate. It came out like a long time ago in Japan, but it just started coming like here, I guess, a couple years ago. Time travel based visual novel. There's dating, there's sci-fi, there's twists. Like, it took a long time to sell me on it. Like, for the first however many hours I was playing it, I just could not stand the main character for like the life of me. And I think Nicolas Suprak was playing the game, and he was tweeting about this too, about how just like awful the main character and a lot of the side characters are. But like, unlike a lot of games, they don't stay awful. Like, there's like character growth and you get invested in it and you really want to know what's happening. And like, for chapter upon chapter, they would like get me really super invested in this relationship, then in this relationship, then in this, and then break me every single time. It's intense. Anna, I think you specifically would actually really like this game. It's yeah.
I haven't played.
It's on Steam too. It's not like a real like heavy dating sim. It focuses more on like their sci-fi story that they're telling, but it'll go on sale. As a developer, I know when the next 2 Steam sales are. I can't tell you though.
Okay, that's fine.
I never thought about that.
Apparently that's something I've clicked not into.
Oh no!
Except I probably would be, apparently.
Yeah. So
Alright,
I don't want to talk about it too much.
Time for more pain.
Without giving spoilers, but
an angry tweeting.
I enjoyed it so much that like the minute I finished it, I immediately started playing the sequel. Like, I cannot go another hour without being in these people's worlds and seeing what they're doing. Like, it's probably the most I've been into a visual novel since Phoenix Wright. Like, that's how much I enjoyed this game. And like I said, it's really rough going for a little bit, but it like really like kind of creeps up on you, or at least it creeped up on me how much I was getting into it. So it's a good game. I would have also liked to be playing Dice with buddies, but it didn't work out. There's also Yahtzee with buddies now.
What?
Yeah, it's suggesting man. It's suggesting 3 games to me: Dice with buddies, Yahtzee with buddies. I mean, that's what Dice with buddies is. They also want me to play Trivia Crack, which I did not realize was still a thing. Oh wait, has anyone else been playing HQ Trivia? No. It's I'll talk about it real quick. It's this live trivia game. I think it's only on iPhone that you can play at 3:00 and 9:00 Eastern, and like there's like a live like host, like a real dude there, like asking questions. Everyone answers it. If you get it right, you get to move on to the next round. I think what people like about it is that there's an actual like cash prize. And so if you get to the end, if you answer all 12 questions right, you and whoever else answered them right split the pot. Actually, in 13 minutes, it's going to start again. The pot's supposed to be like $1,500, so we need to wrap this up.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you for listening to the GameCola Podcast, and thanks to Paul Franzen for coming on and being interviewed, even though he hated it.
Did we not cut out the parts where I kept saying how much I hated this? Joe, we talked about this. Your job is to edit out the awkward parts, so I mean it'll be a 10-minute podcast.
Yeah, no, I'll edit those parts out, but now everybody knows. They can fill in the blanks. The magic of illusion or whatever.
But yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
So if you like GameCola and you like this podcast, be sure to check us out on our actual internet website, GameCola.net, and you can find articles. You've heard about some of the articles that Jetty and Anna are writing currently. Podcasts are posted there. You can also check out content from us at our YouTube channel, GCDotNet, the letter G, the letter C, the word dot, and the word net. You can check us out on social media, right, Anna?
Facebook and Twitter, GameCola.net. Or GameCola, not .net, Jesus. GameCola. Hey. I'm so excited because I haven't done anything for social media in a while.
If you follow us there, you'll get notifications whenever we put out new articles and new video series, fun stuff like that. And you can, if you'd like to email us a question or just anything, and have it read out on the podcast, you can do so if you email to podcast@gamecola.net. And if you want to catch us on our live streams, you can follow us on twitch.tv. Just search for GameCola and you'll find us. Paul,
Yeah.
if people want to find you and your stuff, what should they look out for?
Oh, they should definitely follow me on Twitter. I'm at Paul M. Franzen. They could also follow Orock Studios at Orock Studios. And also, since we were talking about conventions so much in the podcast, I should probably mention that in a couple of weeks, November the 18th and 19th, I'll be showing off The Beard in the Mirror at Retro Game Con in Syracuse. So if anyone wants to come and be awkward with me live and in person,
Wow.
that we can do that. That can happen.
And also be sure to check out Paul and Michael's podcast, where they talk about more of this game dev stuff that they do.
Yes.
On a monthly basis.
We had a whole episode just about mermaids last month. It was pretty good.
Amazing.
So if you're missing Paul and Michael on the podcast, you can go check them out there. And subscribe to them on iTunes, just like you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, and rate both of them highly. Give us a good review, and that's the only thing you can do with that. So, thanks again for listening. Have a wonderful time of day, wherever it is you are. Thanks again, Paul, for coming on, and everyone else for coming out. And goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
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 And that game was called I Hate Podcasts.
The game was called I Hate Podcasts.
Yeah, I wish it was. Sorry, I
Is that
haven't
your new game?
I haven't talked with anyone this long besides Michael for however long it's been since I left GameCola, and usually he does most of the talking in the podcast. But anyway, yeah. So that.
Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Martin, your podcast commander, coming at you with another post-podcast meetup sesh. I don't know. Maybe I'll make this a regular thing after the bloopers. Maybe I won't. But this time, at least, I just want to check up with you, see how you're doing, and also let you know that if some parts of the later part of this podcast sounded a little weird, it's because, well, we're still getting used to this new recording format, and part of that was that when I went to move my computer, as you heard earlier, it actually stopped my Audacity recording, and my microphone was not recording for a good 20 minutes. So near the end, I had to kind of go back and reinsert some things I thought I said to keep the content in. I think I managed to keep it together pretty clearly, at least, even if I sounded a little awkward. But if things sounded a little weird, that would be the case. Bear with us as we continue to sort of explore this new recording style and work out all of the kinks. And thanks for listening. If you're listening all the way back here, then I imagine you're a fan of the podcast because you didn't click off earlier. So I'm glad you stuck around. And thanks for listening. Share the podcast with your friends so that we can have more fun here at this little post-podcast after party in the future. And that's it. See ya.